Hello, and welcome to Ingenious Med's physician training of our ICD-10 diagnosis search. In this brief session, we will discuss several basic elements of ICD-10, Ingenious Med's approach to ICD-10, and lastly, we will finish up by demonstrating the ICD-10 diagnosis search in both the web and mobile platforms. ICD-10 stands for the International Classification of Diseases, 10th edition, and is a revision of ICD-9, which is the current system used by healthcare providers to code or classify all diseases and symptoms. The transition from ICD-9 to ICD-10 will be the biggest change to healthcare coding in a generation, as ICD-9 has been in place since 1979. ICD-10 and its expanded code set provides greater options and flexibility for reporting current, new, and emerging diseases and procedures. Transition to ICD-10 coding will provide better tracking and communication of data among all U.S. healthcare providers, as well as with other major countries throughout the world. Most importantly, the transition date to ICD-10 will be October 1st, 2015. All physician bills with dates of service, October 1st, 2015 forward, must be coded in the ICD-10 code set. Now let's talk about Ingenious Med's approach to ICD-10. We have been ICD-10 compliant since July of 2014. Our approach is to preserve familiar workflows for the physician. In order to help us do this, we have partnered with IMO, Intelligent Medical Objects, accessing their extensive library of diagnosis descriptions, abbreviations, and clinical terminology. IMO is embedded in many major EMR systems, such as Epic, Cerner, and Allscripts, to name a few. And IMO's library of over 250,000 diagnosis descriptions allows for easy selection of the most appropriate and specific diagnosis. Our ICD-10 diagnosis search is available now in both test and production environments and in both the web and mobile platforms. For more information regarding access to the ICD-10 diagnosis search prior to October 1, 2015, simply reach out to your database administrator or to your Ingenious Med account manager. As we have discussed previously, IAM's partnership with IMO has enabled our users to experience a very streamlined and efficient diagnosis search process. The diagnosis search can be initiated by a variety of options. If you know the appropriate ICD-9 or ICD-10 code, you can enter that in the search box and select the corresponding diagnosis description. You can also enter common abbreviations, clinical terms, or use partial word lookups in the search box. Ingenious Med has developed its step-down functionality, which guides you in the selection of the most appropriate and specific code. The step-down functionality assists with selection of descriptors such as laterality, location, associated pathology, chronicity, and the type of disease or organism. Now that we have discussed the basics of ICD-10 and Ingenious Med's approach to diagnosis search, we are ready to show different examples of completing the ICD-10 search process within Ingenious Med. We will begin in the web platform. As you can see, the process for initiating a charge is exactly the same as it is today. In the diagnosis search box, I am entering the ICD-9 diagnosis for hypertension. The search results below bring up options for hypertension, but in the ICD-10 code set and description. By clicking on the diagnosis description, I have selected the ICD-10 code for hypertension and have added it to my bill. The step-down functionality in the web platform operates in the same manner. I am entering CHF, the abbreviation for congestive heart failure. Once I select the initial diagnosis description, I am taken to a series of questions which will determine the level of specificity as they are answered. Once I have selected the type of heart failure and chronicity, I am prompted to save the selection. By clicking on the back arrow, I can return to one of the questions to modify the specificity, thus updating the diagnosis code which I will select. Now we will move on to the mobile platform. I am demonstrating the search on an iPod. However, the search looks virtually the same whether you are on any iOS or Android device. For this first search, I will show how IM step-down approach, coupled with the IMO dictionary of terms, helps drive the code selection to the highest level of specificity. As with the web device, the process to initiate the diagnosis search is the same as it is today. By tapping on the Add Diagnosis button, I am entering femur fracture in order to search the diagnoses for right femur fracture. As you see in the search results, there may be an arrow on the right side of the page. This identifies that there is greater specificity needed to complete the code. By selecting the initial term, I am taken to a series of step-down approaches which help identify issues such as laterality, fracture type, healing type, and sequence of the injury. As with the web platform, selecting these different layers of specificity will have the system suggest a code, and by clicking confirm, I am able to add that diagnosis to my bill. To show another option of how the search result can impact the different diagnoses results that appear and in the number of step-down options that appear, I am typing a few more letters of the femur fracture left open in order to search on the specific diagnosis for left open femur fracture. As you can see in the search results, these include the word open and left. However, some also have that code, the arrow on the right side of the page to identify greater specificity. I can tap on the code and you will see that there are fewer specificity areas to select, which may improve the efficiency and speed of selecting that code. As you become familiar with the diagnosis search in Ingenious Med, you will be able to identify what works best for your particular situation, device, or diagnoses that you need to select. For the last example, I'm going to use GI bleed. That will help you to see how you can begin to combine the specificity of the code and how that needs to be represented in your documentation. By selecting the code for GI bleed, I am asked to select the type of chronicity or the type of bleed. I'm asked to select the type of pathology or the type of bleed. By selecting this specificity, that I should be reminded to include this in the documentation for this particular service. The step-down approach in Ingenious Med will help drive both the most appropriate and specific code that reflects the documentation, but may also help you begin to remember the different types of specificity that must be included in that documentation. This completes the online training of Ingenious Med's ICD-10 diagnosis search. Hopefully, this has given you all the information you need in order to become proficient in the diagnosis search by the time the ICD-10 transition date arrives on October 1, 2015. Thank you for your participation.